Hello, it's Cried here with the Curved Swords breakdown, the weapon type with the most moveset variety. And even though there are only 4 unique curved swords out of 15, all their weapon arts are unique. The discussion for the curved swords will be split into unique and regular curved swords. The regular curved swords will be split up into these sections because of the similarities the infusions share. If you want more background information on optimization done in this video, my defense calculations and soft caps guide are linked in the description down below. I also have a Discord server with plenty of information compiled and channels to help answer questions. You can also just come and hang out. Let's get started. When we're talking about weapons, we can't just look at the attack rating or AR of the weapons. We should also consider other aspects such as their movesets. As mentioned before, the moveset of curved swords is very varied compared to other weapon types. So let us examine their motion values or damage percent of each move and movesets carefully. This is the regular light jump attack of curved swords. And this is the regular heavy jump attack. This is the unique light jump attack of the Beastman's curved sword. This is the unique heavy jump attack of the Beastman's curved sword. You essentially get an extra swing that deals less damage. I personally do like the Beastman's jump attacks, but jump attacks are typically stronger when done with weapons power stanced, which is definitely the case for curved swords. Furthermore, as you will see later, the range on this weapon is quite short, so do keep the caveats in mind. This is the regular heavy attack of curved swords. This is the regular charged heavy attack of curved swords. This is a variation of the heavy attack and charged heavy attack shared by the Shotel, Eclipse Shotel, and the Nox Flowing Sword. Basically the 3 Shotel type weapons. Yes, Nox Flowing Sword is also a Shotel type weapon. The Flowing Curved Sword has a, fancy heavy and charged heavy attack. The best use of this move is probably to dance over your opponent's dead corpse. If you're trying to make a corpse with this move, the only corpse you'll probably be making is your own. But don't let me discourage you if being fabulous is what you're looking for. Next, we have the most famous one on the list, the Wing of Astel, one of the 2 weapons in the game with a projectile-based heavy attack. You will see later that this is an important part of choosing the Wing of Astel because the weapon itself might as well not be a curved sword. It might as well be a magic wand. The projectile section of the MV is very high, but it only applies to the magical AR side of the weapon and not the physical. While we're talking about the Wing of Astel's projectile-based heavy attacks, I am also going to talk about the feint attacks that are only available to curved swords, thrusting swords, and heavy thrusting swords. When you dodge while charging up a heavy attack, you will perform the feint attack. All the curved swords share the same feint attack, but the Wing of Astel's feint attack has really low damage. Yet, it is still best used on the Wing of Astel because of your charged heavy attacks range. You can often get out of a sticky situation by dodging with the feint while charging up your heavy attack. Otherwise, you wouldn't really charge up heavy attacks for most weapons in PvP, and you have better DPS options for PvE. Finally, we have the unique heavy attack and charged heavy attack of the Mantis Blade. It's a really cool and thematic weapon in my opinion. The heavy attack greatly extends the Mantis Blade's range in a motion like a real mantis's claw. It also comes out very quickly for a heavy attack. Talking about weapon ranges, let us take a look at the weapon ranges for curved swords. Catch, who helps me with the weapon ranges, has rebranded his YouTube channel to ERDB. He will have a video detailing all the weapon ranges when the project is done. Anyway, here you can see the weapon ranges of the curved swords. While there is no exceptionally long curved sword, there is an exceptionally short one, the Mantis Blade. But remember, the charged heavy attack of the Mantis Blade snaps out. This is done facing the other direction, but you can see the Mantis's heavy attack extend longer than even the Bandit's curved sword's range, which is usually the longest curved sword. One more thing I want to mention is the weapon ranges of the curved swords aren't really bunched into one large chunk like, say, straight swords. What do I mean? Well, I said the Wing of Astel isn't really a curved sword, which I will explain later. And the Mantis Blade is an outlier in terms of length because of its heavy attack mechanic. So let's remove these two and you'll see the rest of the curved swords more clearly. And let's just make it neater. There we go. You can see the swords being bunched up together as what I would call either the longer curved swords or the shorter curved swords. This can matter especially for PvP, and you'll see the range come into play really soon. Let us begin examining the unique curved swords. First up, we have the Magma Blade. Magma Shower is a unique weapon art, yes, but it is very similar to Spinning Slash, which is actually a pretty strong weapon art on curved swords as it deals over 133 poise damage per hit, guaranteeing the combo if you land the first hit. I use something similar with the Uchikatana in my Wintry Night build. The link to some narrated builds is in the description down below. The big difference between Magma Shower and Spinning Slash is that Magma Shower leaves behind magma puddles. In terms of raw AR, since this weapon deals both physical and fire damage on the Spinning Slash portion, it actually does better with just strength investment. The magma puddles scale to faith only, but the majority of the damage should be coming from the swings. As for pushing 80 strength versus 50 faith after your 50 strength, that is up to other parts of your build. But the faith version slightly wins out because of the magma scaling if you're just considering Magma Blade. However, a big question you have to ask yourself is the extra damage on Magma Shower worth the reduced range, as catching with Spinning Slash is very important. Landing the first strike naturally leads to more damage. Let's move on to the Wing of Astel, the curved sword that isn't really a curved sword. This magic wand deals plus 20% damage to void enemies, but as usual, this is just a side mention. Here, we immediately see the Wing of Astel's best scaling is intelligence, and it does have higher magic damage than physical damage. Yet, even if we invest into intelligence, we see that this weapon's raw AR is very low compared to the Magma Blade, for example, since both are split scaling weapons. In fact, it is low even compared to magic-infused curved swords you will see later. The two selling points of this weapon are its aforementioned heavy attack and this weapon art, Nebula. If you've watched my flail video, you should know this Nebula shares the same name as the Bastard Stars, but it is a different skill. The Wing of Astel's Nebula is much smaller and less curvy, but it does come out quicker and costs 5 less FP. If you choose this weapon, it is because you are going to spam the heavy attacks or the weapon art. You definitely won't choose this one to spam light attacks. Its light attacks are frankly speaking quite poor in comparison. This is quite the rarity, and I do very much appreciate the different playstyle. The Nox Flowing Sword is a Shotel, meaning it ignores 40% of damage negation from blocks. It ignores 60% damage negation with heavy attacks and 70% with charged heavy attacks. This applies to the two other Shotels as well. What stands out about the Nox Flowing Sword is that it is a much longer Shotel than the other Shotels. Flowing form also gives you even more range, but overall, not really a great weapon unless you like the weapon art. The Eclipse Shotel was infamous for the Fire's Deadly Sin exploit, but after the fix, this thing isn't all that scary with its short range and difficult Deathblight application in PvP. Since all bosses are automatically immune to Deathblight, and it's just easier to straight up kill regular mobs instead of trying to Deathblight them, this is naturally not a great pick for PvE. To maximize your AR, start by going for 50 Faith and then pushing Dexterity to its 58 soft cap. I used 55 points here to show the comparison versus 80 Faith. Moving on to the regular curved swords, we have 11 of them. We have the Scimitar, Serpent God's Curved Sword, which has the bonus of giving 2.5% HP plus 25 HP per kill. This bonus effect cannot be stacked and works even if you don't kill with this weapon. Flowing Curved Sword, Beastman's Curved Sword, Mantis Blade, Scavenger's Curved Sword, Shotel, Bandit's Curved Sword, Grossmesser, Shamshir, and Falchion. Because there are so many regular options, this section is quite difficult to do. I will split them into two different categories before we eliminate some of them. Starting with the Heavy Infusion. This slide contains all the regular curved swords sorted by weight from highest to lowest. You can see that even at 56 strength soft cap, Bandits is the best curved sword in terms of AR. Even if we take 2 points away for more endurance, it'll still be the curved sword with the highest AR. The only other weapon to keep in mind is the Scavengers because it has base bleed. But as you can see, when you compare the Scavengers to the other curved swords with 3.5 weight, it is already very lacking in terms of AR. The Scavenger will still have lower AR even on other infusions. This is the other sheet for weapons with something special. The Serpent Gods has the heal on kill passive, the Beastman's has the unique jump attacks, and still quite the high AR on heavy. The Mantis and Flowing Curve Sword have unique heavy attacks, and the Shotel is the only infusible Shotel type weapon. One thing I want to mention is, even though the requirements for the Flowing Curve Sword and Shotel aren't met here in order for a better standardization, their AR isn't negatively impacted because of this. Just keep in mind that to actually use these weapons, they have a higher requirement that needs to be met. These are their stats at 80 strength. It is worth noting that Beastman's has really good strength scaling and even beats the Bandits in terms of AR at 80 strength. Moving on to the Fire Infusion, the conclusions drawn in Heavy Infusion is pretty much the same, although the deficit to Scavenger's AR is actually less when compared to the Bandits. This is the other sheet. You will notice the Beastman's isn't scaling well on fire. You'd rather use Heavy Infusion for this weapon even at 56 strength, assuming you're not using it on an enemy weak to fire in PvE of course. These are their values at 80 strength for Fire Infusion. Next comes the Keen Infusion where Bandits actually gets an even bigger lead on the other regular curved swords. I will do a quick tally after Lightning Infusion for which curved swords are better on strength and which curved swords are better on dexterity. These are their AR for 80 dexterity on Keen. This is the Lightning Infusion, which is kind of the dexterity mirror for fire. Overall, Lightning tends to be better than fire in PvP because of defense calculations. Again, damage calculation video is in the description. Fire and Lightning tend to be better when your strength or dexterity is lower, while Keen and Heavy tend to be better at 80 strength or dexterity. But if fire doesn't scale the weapon especially well, it'll still lose to Heavy at 56 strength in PvP. Anyway, this is the promised tally of the regular curved swords. The strength and dexterity columns are weapons that are not recommended for using the opposite stat. The column in the middle shows you weapons that have a smaller AR difference when swapping between Heavy or Keen, but they all lean towards having slightly higher AR when investing into dexterity, so dexterity is still better for the weapons in the middle column. We won't trouble ourselves too much with quality. At meta PvP levels 125 to 150, they're just crap for the amount of stats you have to invest. They're just really good for endgame PvE if you want to maximize physical AR when you have 99 strength and dexterity. As for Flame and Sacred, they're basically the same thing, except you're picking the elemental damage attribute. We see that Bandits is still in the lead for the first sheet, with Scavengers being the only other option because of bleed. This is the 80 Faith sheet. Now we can confidently eliminate some curved swords to make the cold, blood, and poison infusion calculations later easier. These curved swords are basically inferior versus the Bandits. As for the second sheet, I would eliminate the Shotel because the AR deficit is certainly not worth a shield pierce. There are far better ways to deal with shields too. So, on this sheet, these are the curved swords we're eliminating. The magic infusion is something you're going to use mostly because you're a caster and your weapon art scales to intelligence. It'll be less for swinging the weapon about because if that were the case, you're probably going to prefer code for its frost application. Here, I divided the code infusion into strength or dexterity investment, depending on which stat the weapon scales better with. I'm also only leaving you with the 6 curved swords that weren't eliminated. Furthermore, in order to standardize the point investment, I'm leaving strength and dexterity at 46 rather than hitting the soft cap because it is more beneficial to invest 10 points into intelligence to push your AR by hitting 20 points intelligence soft cap. This is what we have. If you want to use the flowing curve sword, you must be on one of the status effects infusions to utilize that really fancy heavy attack or charged heavy attack. Since multi-hit moves are better at applying statuses, It consistently loses on AR and also loses in reach, so if you want to use this weapon for more than emoting, Cold, Poison, and Blood Infusion are all good choices. This is the corresponding 74-point investment sheet once again, spending 10 points on intelligence instead of strength and dexterity. This is the Blood Infusion with a 74-point investment too. I push Arcane to 45 for the build-up soft cap, which I believe is mostly better for curved swords than having raw investment into strength or dexterity and ignoring Arcane. Curved swords in general do particularly well with Arcane investment. Also, most people probably power stance curved swords, and the power stance moveset of curved swords has many multi-hits such as the running attack. You can see that the Scavenger's curved sword lost its advantage of having innate bleed, because bleed infusion overrides the innate bleed instead of adding to it. If you want a bleed weapon, I suggest just using the Bandit's curved sword or even the Beastman's curved sword, as it actually has a high AR with this particular stat spread, while also having a more practically useful unique moveset, unlike the flowing curved sword. So, for the Scavenger's curved sword, in order to fully take advantage of its innate bleed, Poison Infusion is actually better for it. This way, you can keep the innate bleed while gaining a poison status effect. But for the most part, if you only have access to one status effect, bleed is typically the stronger pick. If you are power stancing, now you can take advantage of the Scavenger's curved sword's innate bleed by using a blood-infused bandits on your main hand with the poison-infused scavengers on your offhand. Finally, we have Occult Infusion. Occult Infusion is quite crap for weapons without innate status buildup, so the only occult consideration here is the Scavenger's curved sword. Versus Blood Infusion using the 45 arcane stat distribution, the Occult Infusion has a lot more AR for a little bit less bleed buildup. If you're going to power stance Scavengers, this is the way to go. Alright, let's do a quick summary of our findings, starting with the unique weapons. The Magma Blade's main selling point is the strong spinning slash variation, Magma Shower. Since spinning slash is a good choice for curved swords because of its high stagger, Magma Shower is a really strong weapon art. Besides, this weapon just looks cool, or should I say, hot. The Wing of Astel is a magic wand, specializing in its unique weapon art, Nebula, which is a great PvE damage option and a decent area control for PvP. It also comes attached with a projectile heavy attack that has a usable charged version because you can feint with a curved sword. The Shotels have quite the crap AR in general to trade for the 40% shield pierce. Honestly, I wouldn't use either of them unless you're specifically going for the weapon arts, as there are much better choices to deal with shields. The Beastman's curved sword actually scales decently with strength and has good unique jump attacks. The Mantis Blade's unique heavy attack is also quite decent with its speed and reach. These unique movesets are the main selling points for these two weapons. The Flowing curved sword also has a unique heavy attack, but I'm just going to pretend this move is an emote. If you want to use this weapon, remember to use it with one of the status infusions. The Serpent Gods loses out in terms of stats, so this one is really mostly for the passive, especially when you're two-handing another weapon, since you'll still get the passive. The passive is quite handy for PvE exploration, and you don't even need to upgrade the weapon. The Bandit's curved sword is your main go-to for Keen or Lightning. It is also great on Cold and Blood Infusion. The Bandits is the yardstick you want to compare the other curved swords to in order to see whether the trade-off is worth it. The Scavenger's curved sword excels at being a great offhand poison infusion for a power stance, or a double Scavengers, with Occult Infusion for a bleed build. It also works decently well for Cold Infusion. Anything not mentioned is eliminated previously. If you found this video helpful, like and subscribe for more similar content. Krite, signing out.